An American writer travels to Ireland to spread his parents' ashes, but realizes quite quickly that he might be staying in a hotel that is haunted by a witch. It is a simple premise, and not the most unique of concepts, I'll say that. Yet Hokum delves much deeper than I ever expected it would. It is less about jump scares and more about facing trauma head on. Now, I should preface and say there will be some spoilers in this video. You have been warned. I will do my best to keep the majority under lock and key though, but I've got a big mouth and I can't help myself. Bauman, played by Adam Scott, is a renowned writer and selects Ireland as the resting place for his parents because that is where they honeymooned. Very sweet. It is evident from the get-go that he is uninterested in the staff of the hotel or even being civil with the people he meets along the way. He is downright rude, even burning the bellboy's hand at one point, which was utterly baffling. However, he does come somewhat close with a bartender named Fiona. Fiona warns him that the honeymoon suite is haunted and therefore it's closed, with the only people having access to it being the owner and his son. She tells him that this is due to it being haunted by a witch and apparently it's now locked in there. So that's promising. Now, up until this point, I was constantly questioning why Adam Scott was being such a dick to pretty much every person he encountered. Spreading your parents' ashes can't be easy, of course, and he seemingly took care with his mother's, but not his father's, indicating that there was no love lost there. We get to the answers not too far into the movie, though, when Fiona discovers him hanging in his room after attempting to take his own life. It is the first moment where the film completely reframes Bauman. Up until now, we've judged him as an arrogant and selfish guy. Suddenly we realize we've been looking at a man who's quietly been planning to end his life. However, he survives, thankfully, and discovers that since finding him, Fiona is now missing. Bauman is thus sent on a personal mission, hellbent on finding what happened to Fiona, leading him to breaking in to the honeymoon suite. Okay, the witch's hideout. This is when the film begins to feel more like Alan Wake, a man unraveling a mystery and searching for a girl. Now, without giving too much away about what he discovers in the honeymoon suite, what we embark on is less about confirmation of a witch, but more about Bauman facing his past head-on, something he has clearly been suppressing since being a young boy. Even down to scattering his parents' ashes, he is quite literally carrying the weight of his past. We do discover that there is a witch in the basement of the hotel, the dumbwaiter in the honeymoon suite being the only way to access her. I should note, she is absolutely terrifying, with one scene showing her climbing up the walls of the dumbwaiter, only to then hunt down Bauman in the honeymoon suite. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time and couldn't quite shake the visual from my head as I went to sleep that night. I mean, there's one part where she just jumps up behind the door and you see a little face because there's like a window up top. It's actually so unnerving. I hated it. But I loved it, but I hated it. As the film progresses, the witch begins to feel less like the true antagonist and more like the physical embodiment of everything Bauman refuses to confront. Every supernatural encounter pushes him closer to the memories he spent his entire life trying to bury. Now, as I stated, prior to the attempt on his life, he was rude, dismissive, making us believe he is simply just an unpleasant person. But as things progress, we realize this is all a defense mechanism by someone who has built up walls due to trauma. People often assume trauma creates sadness. More often it creates distance. It is easier to be a difficult person than risk someone seeing who you really are. We discover his mother passed away when he was just a boy, and throughout the film we catch glimpses of her, indicating an unresolved issue that isn't related to the witch in the hotel. We learn the horror doesn't just exist in the hotel, it exists inside of his mind, in the memories he is desperate to forget. We learn gradually through external horror elements that the real cause of his mother's passing, and spoiler here, so skip ahead 10 seconds, was Bauman himself. From that moment, every single thing makes sense. The attempt on his own life, the isolation, his drinking, and his bitterness towards the world, as well as his inability to finish his latest novel. He has been punishing himself, and we realize very quickly that everything he has been doing is self-destructive and a way to make himself suffer for the mistake that he made when he was younger. What's heartbreaking isn't simply that he caused the accident, it's that a single childhood mistake became the foundation of his entire identity. But what struck me most is that Bauman spends his entire adult life punishing a child. He judges his younger self with the knowledge, perspective, and maturity he simply didn't have at the time. That's something many of us do. We look back on our worst moments and worst mistakes and wonder how we could have been so careless, forgetting that we were completely different people when those moments happened. But more than that, what is really interesting is that he isn't just traumatized what happened to his mother, but also his father's mental collapse following the accident. It shows us that trauma truly can tear apart a family from the inside out. There's a psychological difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something terrible. Shame says, I am terrible. So Hokum isn't about guilt. It's about a man who is convinced one tragic mistake means he no longer deserves to live. It's fitting that Bauman can't finish his writing because he can't imagine an ending for himself either. Only after confronting his past does he finally become capable of writing a future. The real horror in Hokum isn't the witch hiding in the hotel, it's the idea that we can spend decades believing we're beyond redemption. The witch never truly imprisons Bauman, his guilt does. And perhaps that's why Hokum stayed with me long after the end of the film. It's a reminder that healing doesn't begin when the past changes. It begins when we stop allowing the worst thing we've ever done to decide who we are. Let me know if you've watched Hokum, if you found it scary, if you found it meaningful, and if you understood the deeper message as well. Once again, that film was terrifying. I will say it's probably one of the best horrors I've watched in a long time, and it is definitely worth your time. But, as I said, the scene in the honeymoon suite when the witch climbs up the dumbwaiter. I will think about that. I will think about that for the next few weeks, I'd say. It really got me. Not much gets me, but that got me. So let me know if you watched it, and I will see you in the next video.